Bread ain't breaking, just feeding the beast. Need would he step on the block, sandals to the asphalt, or would he preach to the void, blame it on our faults? What if Jesus reacted to this? Would he? Bread ain't breaking, just feeding the beast. Need would he step on the block, sandals to the asphalt, or would he preach to the void, blame it on our faults? What if Jesus reacted to this? Would he? Bread ain't breaking, just feeding the beast. Need would he step on the block, sandals to the asphalt, or would...
What's up, guys? As you can see, it is Reaction Wednesday, and the question is, what if Jesus reacted to this? Now, what is he reacting to today? His name is the Ronte Lamar. He's a former pastor, and he said he left the church. And he did a video a couple of years ago where he broke down 10 things that really 10 reasons church is more business than about than belief. That's the title of his video. And he ran down 10 things that he feel like if we actually knew, we would leave the church. Okay? Now I did 2 videos already reacting to this. The first one was he said church is a business. Second thing he said was you don't know where your tithes are going. This reaction is to the third thing he said. He said that preachers doubt and they don't want you to know that they doubt. Now, before I play this clip, I want you to hit that like and subscribe button, and I want you to share this video so that it can get out into the YouTube algorithm and more people can be blessed by God through me witnessing about the truth. So let's get into it, guys. Now, I'm not here to tell you how bad this person is and how we should be fearful of people like him, and we should condemn people like him. But I am telling you that his rhetoric is dangerous. But at the same time, that's why it's important for us to know the scripture. So I want 4 things I want you to get 4 things out of this video. Affirm a preacher's humanity. Remind yourself that even if you can affirm that he has doubts, doubt is not the enemy. It's when he quits and gives up on God. The third thing I want you to know is we as a community have to have our preachers' backs as well. We have to make sure that we have his back and we're strong in helping him to stay on track, holding him accountable, whether it be holding him accountable or whatever. We have to make sure that we have our preachers back. And the last thing, we have to make sure that we stay in the God-centered community of the church. Meaning, we don't allow our pastors to feel like they're alone and they start to isolate themselves, and they focused on studying to make sure that they feed us and they stop feeding themselves, and then they lose track of keeping in relationship with God. So we have to make sure we keep that community connected and we stay focused on keeping that community connected. So let's look at what he had to say.
Most pastors doubt, but can't admit it. Believe it or not, many pastors experience doubt about their faith, but they can't afford to be honest about it. If a pastor publicly questions God's existence, the Bible's reliability, or key theological concepts, they risk losing their influence, their job, their congregation, and even their reputation. So instead, they bury their doubts and continue preaching, even if deep down they no longer believe what they're saying. This creates a culture of performance rather than genuine belief, where pastors feel trapped in their roles, unable to leave even if they no longer believe. They might spend years secretly questioning their faith, all while standing in front of a congregation preaching certainty. I can remember late night Google binges myself about fossil evidence and contradictions in scripture, and then waking up Sunday morning to deliver a message on unwavering.
Now, what I would say first off, before I get into my 4 points, he said doubt at the beginning, but as he went through his explanation, that was unbelief. That was not doubt. That's not a pastor who is going through some things and they're dealing with life and how life be lifing. He explained an unbeliever that's in the pulpit, that's preaching to a congregation, that's leading a flock of people. That was not a believing, devout, God-fearing preacher. That was somebody that is an unbeliever who is in the pulpit, and he has trapped himself and put himself in a position because too much is given, much is required. So he's explaining a non-believer who has put themselves in a position and claimed they're a believer, and somebody put them in a position of being a teacher, and they're there, but they lose sight and they get distracted by, I want a huge congregation. So they don't continue their relationship with God. They focus on trying to make sure that they keep you, the congregation, happy and putting money in the pot. And I can say that for myself. When I was thinking the other day, true story, I had to look at making sure that I get up in the morning and not worry about making sure I got a video together for the people that have subscribed to my channel. It's about waking up and keeping my relationship on track with God. And that's very important because I have decided to step out on faith and start getting on camera and talking about my belief in Jesus Christ. And that is a very important task. And I can't get up in the morning and just focus on, oh, I got to bring a good video. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to study so hard on whatever topic I'm going to bring. But what about my relationship with God? I can get over 1 million subscribers. But if I'm just talking from a place of constantly trying to gain subscribers, then I'm gonna lose track of my relationship with God. That's when you get into that place of it becomes stressful, it becomes overwhelming, you get fatigued, because that's what I started to do. I started to find myself getting overwhelmed, getting fatigued, because I'm trying to get my subscribers up. I'm trying to get people to click on my videos and things of that nature. But I have to make sure that my relationship is in line with God. So the first thing, the preacher is not a machine. He's not a machine. We have to affirm his humanity, their humanity. There are people that are under pressure, just like the people in the congregation. They go through life too. Their bills don't stop because they've gotten in the pulpit. Their children don't stop growing up needing guidance. Their wives are not always smiling and happy. They're under spiritual attack because they're on this journey of relationship with God and then teaching other people about that. The enemy does not like that. There are expectations that we as a congregation put on them. Because if we feel like a preacher is boring, we don't listen. We don't get it. But we affirm their humanity because the greatest example that we have is Jesus. and he experienced deep heaviness to the point where his sweat became like drops of blood. He was honest with God in the garden. This man was not talking about being honest with God. He was talking about the doubts and the lack of faith that has creeped up in your life, and you decide to still keep putting yourself in a position where you feel trapped to bring a good lesson on Sunday. Honesty is not failure. So if a preacher is human, God knows that. But it's an invitation when you are doubting for God to strengthen you. Again, he mentioned doubt, but he really talked and got into non-belief. And when you honest with God and he can strengthen you, it removes shame and opens up your heart to God, the person that is all about. The person that is all about. And we as a congregation have to affirm that humanity and stop putting our biblical binoculars on the preacher, thinking that he has to do everything perfectly. We have to affirm their humanity. Now, he talked about doubt. Again, he called it doubt. The second thing I want to talk about is doubt is not the enemy. Quitting is. And what he did and explained is a quitter. He didn't explain somebody that's going through, that's living life and they're going through life. He explained it as somebody who has allowed the enemy to cause them to quit on God, to quit their relationship with God, to walk away from their relationship with God. See, you think you're just walking away from the pulpit, or you walking away from a church or a body of believers. But when you start to get to a point where your lack of faith has turned into you quitting and not believing in God anymore, that is the problem. He mentioned doubt, but he went off on a tangent and really explained somebody that has quit on God. Doubt becomes dangerous only when it goes unaddressed or unconfessed. You can say doubt only wins when you stop bringing it to God. Now, again, he said, I remember late Google night venges where I came up with some great ideas, and I can affirm what he's saying. Studying and looking up things that grab and keep everybody's attention on these videos. And I had to stop and say, God, what do you want from me in this? And then I studied and I looked. God does not have to bless my YouTube channel. He wants me to ask to join his kingdom work. It's not my work. It's his kingdom work. So when you start getting that doubt in there, it's because you think it's about you. The fact that you're wrestling shows you still care and still believe. So when he stopped wrestling with what he called doubt, he left. So there wasn't doubt. There was unbelief. A struggling leader is not a failing leader. It's when you're silent, when you try to make everybody think you have it together and nothing goes wrong in your life. And that you start preaching to people as if you're perfect and they the ones got to get it together. Now, the third thing on my notes is about really us trying to give, help to the preacher. Bring them back to the pattern Jesus gave. But I said the third thing is the preacher does not have it all figured out. Jesus prayed, if it is possible, nevertheless, not my will, but yours. So it's not, it says tell them in my notes, but it's not up to us. It's also up to them. If they've gotten to a place so deep that, like what he's talking about, where they don't believe anymore, even in the scriptures. See, we have to understand that they don't have it all figured out, but if they stay connected to Jesus Christ, we realize he never doubted the Father. When he said, if it's your will, take this cup of bitterness from me. But if it's not your will, let your will be done. That's not doubt. That's him strengthening his faith to know that, hey, even though my Father has asked me to do this, and it's going to work out for my good, and I know that everything God does will work out for the good of those who love him. So Jesus knew that. He surrendered his feelings to God's will. So when we're talking about a human being, Jesus had a human moment, but he was honest with the Father about that human moment. And if the preacher is being honest about his human moments, he won't quit. And he won't get up there and start self-aggrandizing and talking as if he has it all figured out. But again, it goes back to, we also have to make sure we don't just have our spiritual binoculars on him or our biblical binoculars on him, where we start to judge him and not become that community that backs him up. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, it says call them to community, not isolation. That's the congregation and the leadership getting behind their pastor and calling them to the community of the church. But I say the preacher needs the community too. They shouldn't have to just go home and think of what they're going to preach to us each week on Sunday and Wednesday and be to themselves on that. We should be praying for them. We should be encouraging them because they need it too. They need that community to surround them, wrap their arms of love around them. Now, you could say many ministers fall because they try to handle doubt on their own. Because a lot of people do. A lot of pastors do try to act like they don't doubt. That's why I'm not afraid to tell you, yes, when I started this, I felt like I was stepping out on faith. But when it gets down to the nitty-gritty and you trying to get paid for doing this, I started to make it more about that than it being about serving God and being a part of his purpose and not mine. So you don't have to carry things by yourself. And pastors have to know they're not carrying these things by themselves as well. Because again, you come to service, they have to keep our attention for a certain amount of time. And that's not easy. Because I've talked to people about my channel and they say you go too long, then you lose my attention. And our attention span is not that long. You will lose people's attention. But we got to think about it. Most leaders need help. Moses needed Aaron and Hur. Paul needed Barnabas. And Jesus drew Peter, James, and John into his sorrow. He took them up to the top at the moment of his transfiguration. He took them in the Garden of Gethsemane when he was praying. He told them to sit there and watch and pray. So a leader is not somebody who has a position where they don't have to worry about any spiritual attacks, anything happening to them. They have the same issues that we have. And we have to think about that. So when we're constantly thinking that the preacher is treating the preacher as if they're Jesus himself, then it's probably a very high chance that that preacher can get to himself, feel all alone, and if he doesn't express that honest doubt to God, he can fall into temptation. He can start falling into the sin of unbelief. And that's really what that man was talking about, unbelief. He was not just talking about doubt. So as a person who believes that we need the preacher to be strong, we need a preacher that believes that we're going to listen to this man. But we also have to make sure that we are his support system, because he needs it. Because he's talking to us about Jesus Christ. And the devil does not want that. So we can never think that the enemy will not attack a preacher because he stands in the pulpit. So guys, let's reprogram our thinking. Let's get back to love. Let's recover the life that the devil tried to take from us each and every day. And most importantly, God may not be there when you want him, but he'll definitely be there in the nick of time. So let's allow the scriptures to speak. And I hope that you listen. But don't just be a hearer of the word, also be a doer. I love you guys. Peace. And I'm out.
Revelations unlocked, wisdom so fresh, got my spirit restocked. Streaming hope like podcasts on demand. Faith-built visions, God's work in my hand. Scripture speaks, it's the vibe in my